Hello, everybody. Welcome to Profiling Evil Podcast. I'm Mike King, and today I'm with Stefan Adika of Adika Live, a great new show called Coffee Talk with Adika Live. You're not going to want to miss it. I hope you're going out and subscribing to him and listening to the great content. But I want to tell you just a little bit about him as we get started. Stefan is a bass guitarist by trade. He played with a number of bands, and he also played with some pretty amazing big names. Guns N' Roses guitarist Gilby Clarke. He was a member of the Dee Dee Ramone band. Adika performed with, and this is very cool because this takes me back to junior high school and high school, Alice Cooper and Eddie Van Halen. How cool is that, buddy? Thank you for sharing that with me. You're also the bass guitarist for the Sunset Winos. What incredible names these bands come up with. An all-star jam band that features all kinds of former members and current members of groups like Kiss, Guns N' Roses, Jellyfish, Stray Cats, Dee Dee Ramone, and many, many more. I mean, what an amazing background. And what a strange thing that two polar worlds came together when you and I met, because we immediately felt like buddies.
We did. We definitely did, Mike. And first of all, thank you for bringing me on here and sharing my story. And it's a wonderful thing. And I got to thank Melissa for that one, for introducing us. And it's an honor to be here. It is strange, huh? How we connected. I have my show. It's funny because you're mentioning my past resume. And when people would ask me, I'm like, oh, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. And that, I guess, take it from there. I mean, how I started out before I did my podcast, I was, friends with a lot of people in band. Before they were in bands, we were all just musicians and with the same dream. And we kind of ran in a small circle, and kind of how I met you. It's just like, oh, and you have something in common and you run with it. And I don't think it's as good as it's how great of a musician I was. I think it was more that you could hang and have a conversation with these people. But my friend was in Guns N' Roses. He just joined, and they were doing a solo break, for you Guns N' Roses fans out there. And I moved to Los Angeles from Brooklyn, New York originally. And I went there at my base. I go, let's see what happens. And then from that, I ended up meeting other people. And I took it from there.
It's so strange because number one, I mean, I've worked with a lot of cops who are assigned over in Brooklyn homicide, for instance, and I've actually had a couple of them on the show as we've talked about some of the good old days. I've been in those Brooklyn neighborhoods, and I've walked up and down the street in all those brownstones, and I just can't. I think of you as a young kid. Playing guitar in those close apartments. I mean, that had to have been maddening for your neighbors, wasn't it?
It was, I grew up, and for everybody out there, you'll understand this. And if you're into that whole world, I grew up in the neighborhood Canarsie, and Canarsie is most famous for the movie Goodfellas. If you ever saw the movie Goodfellas, the bar they lit up, I lived about maybe 10 blocks from that bar. It was a street on Rockaway Parkway by Avenue N. So anybody from Canarsie watching, or from Brooklyn, hey, how you doing? And the neighborhood was, I'm 54 now. So back then, I was big on, my mom always had doo-wop. So, it was big in the house and always loved it. And if you watch any Brooklyn mafia film, what music did they always play? Doo-wop. You always get your Frankie Valli, your Dion. But I ended up, back then, I ended up, my parents got divorced when I was at a young age, and I ended up, music was my out. And it would, everybody needs something to make them feel good about something. So, when you're feeling your parents aren't together, back then divorce was a weird thing. I turned to music, old school, Shirelles, Chuck Berry. And I would pretend on a couch. I didn't have an instrument. I didn't know. I would pretend on a couch. It was a stage and people were watching me. So I didn't even know how to play. We moved to my grandmother's house. There was a piano, but my family didn't have much money. I would sit there and try to play by myself and write the whole alphabets on the keys, and I couldn't get it. And then didn't have a loud guitar back then, so there was a broken acoustic I found, and there was too many strings, so I put 4 strings and made it into a bass guitar, and I started learning House of the Rising Sun, and that was the beginning of it for me. And I wanted the rock and roll. It was like, oh, you could be a rebel, you could be dangerous, but when you're Jewish and paranoid like me, and when I'm the type of guy, before I leave the house, I have to check 10 times before I turn the stove off. So I could be dangerous on stage, but off stage, I could be very cautious and okay, and nervous. So
It actually was an amazing outlet for you, I guess, to be something that you weren't in your day to day life. Was your family a traditional Jewish family? Did you go to the synagogue regularly?
It's funny you say that. My dad is from Israel, Haifa, and you can't get more Jewish than that. And they're tough. They're very tough. And my dad ended up um, had a printing business, and my mom, she was just from Brooklyn, just a yelling Jewish lady. Oh my God, what are you? What's wrong with you? Like an Edith Bunker. If you watch All in the Family, that's my mom's voice with white frizzy hair. My mom will kill me if she sees this.
Well, hopefully she will see it because I mean, we are, as Shakespeare said, the greatness of our heritage runs in our veins, and she is what made you, and your dad made you into the human being that you are. And I want you to tell me a little more about your family, and then I want you to remind me, because I got to tell you a cool story about Haifa.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, my family, I grew up always laughing. Then that was my out. It's like if something was bothering me, I made a joke about it. And that's how everybody handles their life different. Some people get into drinking, again, the drugs. Me, it was about the joke and busting chops with somebody. And an East Coast thing, if you're busting chops with somebody, that means you love them. Now, when I went to Israel and we talked about Haifa, so now my family's divorced. This is a funny story. So we're starting from when Adika was young and growing up now. Music, Beatles was my Bible. That was it. It was like the Gershwin of songwriting for me. It was. I could relate to it. Back then. You'd look at a vinyl record. It was like a book, and it took you to another world. Now we got the internet, which is a blessing and a curse. It's maybe too much exposed, but back then you had to use your imagination. And I was like, this is fabulous. And I would sit and draw, sketch out the Beatles and want to be a Beatle. And it was such a big thing to me. And I remember August 1980, I went to Haifa. Now my parents are divorced. And back then I had two bar mitzvahs, and wasn't living with my father who speaks Hebrew. And I don't speak any of it. And so my mom had me in Brooklyn, some yeshiva. I took some bar mitzvah lessons. It was a crash course. Learn how to read your bar mitzvah in 20 days, something like that. So they write it out, and I couldn't read Hebrew. In Hebrew, if you open up it's backwards. Everything it looks like all the writing is, So I'm reading it, and he wrote it out in English, Barooc, and you're supposed to sing it. Baruch atah Adonai. You have to sing, and this was my first time ever singing. I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. Baruch, you have to sing like you're singing like oh then river, like you're singing this old, it's too heavy for me. Like I'm working on the railroad. It's heavy, and it's like So now I get there and I have a piece of paper. When I get to Israel, and it's crumpled up like this, the whole bar mitzvah, the whole prayer. We get to the wall, and I'm wearing my Saturday Night Fever white suit, and my dad, go ahead, read. And there's a lot of people at the wall, and I thought they were all for me, but meanwhile, everybody's having a bar mitzvah. And Jerusalem is a beautiful place, everybody. If you go there, it's another world. Israel, it really is a beautiful place.
It is
And
an amazing place. Yeah.
it's great. I get there, get to the wall, and I do this. They open up the Torah. I'm supposed to be looking there. I'm looking here. And I sound like Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, like an auction. What is this? My dad says, what are you doing? I go, Dad, we got no choice now. We're here. Make the best of it. What? Your mother did this. I had two bar mitzvahs, the one in Israel. They give you it was like I got a watch, a Seiko watch. It was one in a poker game for my family. I don't know. And then when I got to America, it was more the nice, you get the nice bar mitzvah, the nice, and you get cash in an envelope. It was two different worlds. One was, old school. Yeah, it was the Lebanon war was going on. I remember that. And I was in Haifa. So I believe from 19, I was 13 years old, Lebanon and Haifa. So it's like going from California to Vegas, but you could see the whole sky light up. And I was like, oh my God. And I was scared. I was like, oh my God, this is scary. But I was there for 2 weeks, and yeah.
Well, and people don't realize, I mean, how close those countries are that are fighting constantly. I mean, you're standing on the Golan Heights looking over war zones. You are next to Syria. I mean, it
Yeah.
is amazing country. I had an Israeli soldier assigned to my unit during the 2002 Winter Olympics, and he was a terrorism expert dealing primarily with uh, the people that would strap bombs on themselves,
Mm.
and that's why he was assigned to us. And it was incredible to listen to him talk about stories. I remember one time he actually knew that there was a man that had a suicide vest on that climbed onto a school bus and was riding on the school bus, and he jumped on the bus and went over and sat down next to the guy, holding his hand so the guy couldn't ignite the mechanism to detonate the bomb. I mean, talk about heroism. And finally, they were able to get the children off, and he held him long enough for his compadres to get on and help him. But I just love Israel. So
I
did you go spend time in Israel, going
oh,
to
I
all
did.
of
I did.
the
Yeah.
Christian sites and the Jewish sites? I mean, how did you?
We went around. My family was living in Haifa. My grandmother. It's funny. This is the first time I met my grandmother, my dad's mother. And when we met each other, the language barrier. It's like I only knew English, especially I'm from Brooklyn, so I speak Brooklynese. I speak it, So anybody watching me, what did he just say? So if you're watching my YouTube show, you're gonna go, what did he just say? You gotta just watch me just speak. You'll end up speaking like me, and I don't know if it's a good thing. But my grandmother would go nish night, and like talk, and like it was like more sign language. And I'm meeting my grandma, and we look just like each other, and we look exactly like each other. It's funny, the reddish hair and the eyes, except she's really small, and I'm like 6 feet. So it was wild, but we went around. It was so beautiful. I remember walking in the markets in Jerusalem, and first of all, when you're walking out there in 1980, which
Are
everybody
you are
at
you
the time,
talking up on top in the old Jerusalem?
old Jerusalem,
Oh
but
yeah, isn't that
it,
something?
it's beautiful. But you're walking around. It's like if you guys ever saw the movie Midnight Express. It's like you get off everybody's with the guns. It's why I never experienced anything like this. It's like you
And
felt like you're
children,
visiting
these
this.
young soldiers are children packing guns around.
What are they? I think like 16. They got to go into the army, if I'm incorrect. They're really young when they're starting. It's like everybody in Israel, you have no choice. You got to join. All my cousins, aunts, uncles, all went to the army, and it's like no big thing. They got bullet wounds. It's like what, I mean, I remember my dad goes, "You got to be a man. You got to work on a kibbutz." I'm like, "What? Why do I want to work on a kibbutz? I got air conditioning. I live in Brooklyn in my grandmother's house. This is nice. Why would I want to suffer? No, you need to suffer. What? Why? You got to be a man. It's like the Godfather movie. You got to act like a man. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why can't I have a nice life? I'm only 13. Give me a chance. Give me time to grow up. And that's why I'm like the way I am. I don't want to grow up, but 54. But
So
yeah,
let me ask
it
you
was.
this: as a
Mhm.
Jewish boy, did your father take you to any of the Christian sites, or is that?
No, my dad was, he took me around, and we went around. We did go to a couple of places with the Christian sites, but now it's all a blur. I wish I went back to really, at 13, you're not really appreciating everything you would do now. Like now I would absorb it more. Like this is, this happened here. Then I'd be like, I'd have to touch the rock. I remember going to the wall, sticking a prayer. Everybody's put in prayers in the wall and wishing for the best. Now, my dad liked the horses, and he became a manager for a jockey, big jockey, won the Kentucky Derby for you guys out there. Oh yeah, and then they went their ways. But after my dad, there's a jockey called Mike Smith, and my dad managed him for years, years, years. This jockey actually went and he won a couple of years ago the Breeders' Cup, the Kentucky Derby, Triple Crown, all these races in 1 year. If you Google Mike Smith, you'll check him out. And he was one of my first interviews I did the year that he won all those races. Because my channel I started about a little over a year, and I asked Mike, "Would you come on my show?" And 100%. He came on and we had a conversation. But my dad ended up becoming a big jockey agent, and that was most of the trip. He was looking at the reading, making sure his horses were winning, whatever, and I was trying just to be a kid. But yeah, it was
That Wailing Wall is amazing. Did you take the tour inside and go past the Holy of Holies? And I
yes.
felt so
Mhm.
subconscious and almost ashamed to be touring in such a sacred place where Jews were trying to worship, and it just didn't feel right to me. But I mean,
Mhm.
I guess tourism's tourism, but it just seemed like the wrong place to do that.
Yeah, and you gotta when you go there, I guess you gotta take it, look at it like it's part of history, and this is what you're being. This is the land. I mean, when you think about Israel, that's what I was thinking about how small it is, but yet how powerful they are, and to this day, it's a small little. And forever they've been fighting and fighting and fighting. It's when you think about it, Israel has been, it's just it's a. I was thinking more of that stuff when I went there when I was a little kid, just how this small little place in the.
I was standing at the Wailing Wall and my cell phone rang, and it was the wife of a guy who was my partner working ritual child sex abuse for a number of years at the Attorney General's office.
Mm.
And she called me to tell me that he had just suffered a heart attack and died. And
Wow.
it was a an emotional moment, but I remember scratching on a piece of paper and then going over and putting his name in the wall, and it will
Mm.
always be one of those special experiences for me.
That's wild, huh? You're right there, huh? And when that got the call, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, his name was Lieutenant Matt Jacobson. He was an incredibly gifted investigator, and yeah, he and I we investigated 300 plus counts or different cases of ritual child sexual abuse. And if you remember back in the early 90s, it was kind of the satanic panic era. They were
Mm.
having regressed memories that were coming out in therapy sessions and other things. And it just went like wildfire across the United States. And I was hired by the Attorney General and the Utah legislature to come in and work on this team. And Matt was my partner. So anyway, I'm kind of going down
Yeah,
a rabbit hole, but that's what we're doing today is going down rabbit holes together.
definitely. That's interesting. That's very interesting. Now, did you only go to Israel one time? You've been there
No, I've been there a couple of times.
a
Yeah.
couple of times.
Yeah.
When was the last time you've been there?
My wife and I were there about 5 years ago, and um, it was we were part of get this. So I with another profiler, an FBI profiler, were invited by the Discovery Channel to look into the death of Tutankhamun, King Tut. And we ended up spending about 2 years investigating Tut's death, and it led to a book that we wrote called "Who Killed King Tut." But we also did three shows for the Discovery Channel, that one of which won an Emmy award, and I have throughout my career since getting that Emmy said that it had to do with the investigation and the incredible acting of me on the screen. In reality, it was for videography, but I
Yeah.
claimed that it was me. But we did this thing, and so a tour group in Salt Lake City, where I live, asked me if I would go and take the Egypt side of the trip and talk about Tutankhamun and 18th dynasty pharaohs. And so they gave my wife and me this top drawer trip that was Israel, Egypt, Jordan, and we did all of that together. So I'd been there alone, and then I had been there with my wife, which was really wonderful.
You got to experience it the right way then, because you went a couple of times. So maybe the first time it goes by so fast, you have to go a second time to absorb it and really, really get it.
Yeah,
See,
it was pretty remarkable the second time. And I got to tell you, so here's my Haifa story. So uh, one of the things I have learned a lot about over my lifetime is the Latter Day Saint faith. And there's a big Jerusalem center in Jerusalem that is owned by Brigham Young University. It's an education and training center, and the Latter-day Saint Church made an agreement when that was built that they would never proselytize in Jerusalem. So there's no proselytizing going on, but that they send for Far Eastern studies students over and they attend this thing. Well, in order to get the building permit, two things had to happen, and these are remarkable to me. One is that they had to prove that there was a historical presence of the Latter-day Saint faith in Jerusalem, which is a huge thing to try to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the second was they had to find a piece of ground that didn't have an artifact on it of any kind that they could build. And of course, Latter-day Saint writings talk about how the leadership of the church, the prophet of the church, and others prayed and thought and agonized over to where to get, and finally picked a spot, and it actually was completely free of all artifacts. So it satisfied the first problem. And so the Israeli government was like, okay, one check, but you're not going to be able to prove that you have a historical basis in Israel. And it took them back to Haifa, where two Latter-day Saint missionaries in the 1800s were serving and died from consumption and cholera. And because there was such a fear of transmitting the disease if they transmitted the bodies, they immediately buried them on Israeli soil in the Haifa cemetery. And that was what the Latter-day Saint faith used to say. We have an established presence going back into the 1800s before and when Israel became Israel. And that gave them permission to, so this Elder Clark and Elder something else, who happened to be from a community that's about 20 minutes from my house, ended up being the reason why the Latter-day Saint faith was able to establish the Jerusalem Center just across from the wall and everything else. So in fact, actually above the sacred grove where Christians believe Christ suffered through the atonement.
Yeah. Wow. I know that area very well. I remember going over there. Now, wow, that's a heavy story. So they buried them really quick. They don't want to carry a plague or anything like that.
Yeah, and there's actually a letter, and maybe someday I can find it and send it to you because I actually have a copy of it when I came back and researched, of the mother of one of the elders who wrote this heartbreaking letter to a German woman who took care of the two elders in Haifa, thanking her for caring for them the last couple of days before they died, and asking her to send his watch home and any letters that he had. But in this letter, she said, I hope one day God will make it clear why my son had to stay in Israel. And I remember Latter-day Saint leaders many years later sent the family of that woman who was now dead a note saying, we want to just share with you why that had to happen from our position. So kind of a cool story.
Yeah. Definitely a cool story. Wow. Very cool. See, this is why I would love to go back. I mean, now with everything in the world and traveling, it's so wacky, but I would love to go. That's one of my bucket lists, to go back to Israel, just to absorb it a little, not from a 13-year-old now from a grown man, and really take in the history. And,
wouldn't this be fun to have to go together and have a Jewish perspective and a Christian perspective and walk old downtown Jerusalem and go to where all of the important things happened in biblical history?
It would be great. It would be, you know what? It'd be an awesome vlog, and just to really record that and to have a conversation about it.
And then we lean on Itai Kazaz, who's now a colonel or something, and we have him tell us some cool crime stories to talk about along the way. Maybe we better do that. Who knows?
I think that's a good one. I'm sure you know what? There's probably so many stories that you would just blow everybody's mind out there and just intrigue.
Now
and then
we got to get off this Israel thing and talk
okay,
about some other
okay.
things. But I got to ask you, did you go to McDavid's and have lunch?
I did not. No,
It cracked me up driving down through Jerusalem, and there it was, the
yeah.
McDonald's version, McDavid's,
I
and
did
I'll
not.
never.
I did not. I do remember one thing about Israel before we go. I remember all the signs were it was reflective. It was like those reflectors that they have, and it looked like I was like, oh my god, this is like what kind of lights are those? And when I look close, I go, oh, they're those tin things that go with the wind, and you know what I mean. They would have everybody had it back then. And falafel was on every like a hot dog stand in New York. Falafel was everywhere. You didn't have hot dogs there, but you had every falafel stand. You know, which was a beautiful thing. So there you go. But as a diet, they got the best diet for your cholesterol, the chopped, the food. I mean, when you think an Israeli salad, it's the healthiest thing for you. And it's really, and if you want to go on a food rabbit hole really quick, I can make a great hummus and a great salad, but you have to prep it. And it's parsley and lemon. And there's no oil in it. It's the Israeli salad. Just a little tip for you all.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this: did you go through Hezekiah's tunnel?
Did I don't remember if I did now. I would remember, yeah, but yeah.
Narrow, it's knee deep in water, and it's where
No,
they
I didn't. No, I
oh, and
didn't go.
it's a good hour and a half, 2 hours of winding through, and then coming out at the pool of Bethesda. But it's incredible. My wife couldn't go because she's claustrophobic, and
Oh,
there were times in there where I thought, "Holy smoke! I don't know if I can do this. I'll never do it again." But it was an incredible experience.
I would do it. I would definitely do it. I mean, I want to do a little more traveling and bring a little more history from my eyes out there to everybody. And now I'm more into it. You know, I'm older, but back then, all I cared about was rock and roll, the Beatles, my mind wasn't there at what it is now. You know, you change. It's like food. Some people love milk, then they'll turn. I don't like milk no more. You change as you get older. Your taste buds change.
Yeah,
So,
there you go. Well,
mhm.
folks, I'm talking to Stefan Adika of Coffee Talk with Adika Live, and you are going to quickly see why I think this is one amazing human being. And we became friends as I did an interview on his YouTube channel, Coffee Talk with Adika Live. And immediately there was just a kinship there, and we have had a blast ever since. So, Stefan, tell me why you, and maybe you haven't left rock and roll, but why you decided to create Coffee Talk with Adika Live.
You know what? I kind of did leave. You know, when I ended up moving out of Los Angeles, and my wife, we did the Brady Bunch. I was married before, had a son, and he was getting into high school. And my wife had two kids before, and we ended up just moving to the Central Coast. And then I was, what am I going to do now? I had my real estate license, and I was, you know, playing around with that, and you know, working hard at it, selling homes, and um, I felt like I lost my identity. And at the same time, just being funny. And you know, I have the tattoos, and the tattoos were just from being a musician, trying to be a rebel. Everybody wants to be James Dean, and then you think about what the hell I just do. I really why did I get all these tattoos? Which if I go back in time, I probably wouldn't go below the elbow. It's like it's a haircut you can't change. So anybody think about getting a tattoo, get it when you're 90. Okay, don't get it now because people judge you. And when I was doing my real estate license back then and try to make a long story longer, I would do cold calling. I would try to make jokes with people. And I go, if I could bring this personality on YouTube, it'd be a good thing. And then I got a home listed, and then I had the tattoos. So I try to dress, you know, Yiddish, but think British, and wear a nice shirt, nice watch, so people trust me. Well, he has a nice watch; he's not going to rob us. But if they didn't have the nice watch, you see the tattoo on a hand, they're going to rob you. So I'm knock. I got this great house for sale, you know, Mike. Thank you, and knock on the door, and you're just looking. I go, okay, you're not thinking of selling your house, and I go side by side. I do one of these, and I have the tattoo on my hand. I go, okay, you're not thinking about moving, but who in the neighborhood you don't like? I'll help you get rid of them. And the guy just started laughing. And I'm like, he goes, I go, well, I was a musician. I try to tell my story. But when I tell people,
People in Goodfellas too.
yeah. But then when I tell people my story, oh, I played with a guy from Ramones, Kiss, and Guns N' Roses. You sound like a complete idiot. You sound like this guy's full of it. I'm like, okay. So then you know, they didn't believe me. And I was friends with these real estate people out there, and they have a show out there to help other agents to be agents. Now, real estate agents, the test is the hardest thing. I took the test like 9 times, I failed. But I just started using my personality, and I just got a listing in less than 3 weeks. Not, and the test has nothing to do with how to sell. It's about negotiating and getting the right deal, the right place for the right person, and that's it. And communication and do the right thing. But these agents they don't know what they're doing. So I go, there's no heart. And whatever you do in life, you gotta have heart. So I started doing music, heart, real helping somebody else in real estate, heart. That's what it was about for me. So I started doing this, and then I met somebody, and they go, "Oh, these people, why don't you do some music for us here?" And I started doing that. And then I had a friend of mine had a YouTube channel. I go, "You people watch this? Who watches this stuff?" He goes, "You have a story." He goes, "Why don't you come on my show?" Because I played with the guy from the founding member of the Ramones who passed away. I was with him till the end, and till the end of his career. I go, "Yeah, I'll do that. No problem." So I walked around. I took him to the last place he lived, and I took him to his grave in Hollywood Forever, because there's a lot of YouTube people that love that stuff. I'm like, "Okay, let's go." And the graveyard is it's a lot of history there. You have Tyrone Power, the actor there. There's a lot of Judy Garland. There's a lot of history there. Bugsy Siegel's there. So anyway, I I go and taking him because I just got great reviews. People like you, and you ever think about doing? I go, who wants to listen to me talk? I go, come on. I go, I listen to me. I can't handle it for 10 minutes. So 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 then I was getting back into my real estate, and I figured, let me do some vlog and do this real estate and tell stories about Paso Robles, California, like Jesse James, like, cause I'm into that stuff. It's like I found a place. It was the Pine Street Saloon. It's haunted. There's a hotel which is on my YouTube channel, and you can go through the vlogs, my early stuff, what I was doing before, what I'm doing now. I went the Paso Robles Inn, which was built by Jesse James's uncle, Drury James. And I don't know if you know the story, Mike. This is interesting. Jesse James and Frank James would hide out in Paso Robles because their uncle ran the town, and because of the hot springs there, the sulfur. So when they had their bullet wounds or whatnot, the James gang would go to Paso Robles. They would work at this hotel. They build tunnels under the hotel to the Salinas River. So I had to document this. The Paso Robles was known later on, it was like the place Central Coast. Now, Paso Robles, you're asking people out there watching, whereas you have Los Angeles, you have San Francisco, it's in the middle, Central Coast by Hearst Castle. So I was going around finding stories like that, and I could mix that with my real estate and show people I have a heart, I'm funny, and hey, we want Stefan to help sell the house. Then Corona happened. But back to the Paso Robles thing, you got to watch it. It's a great thing. And Jesse James, he had helped work there. And he lived in Paso. It's pretty wild when you go through it. Supposedly it's haunted. They say, I don't know. But anyway, whatever's going to get you the views and thumbs up. That means anybody watching right now, subscribe to my channel. It's free. If you don't like it, send it to somebody you can't stand. Let me annoy them as much as I annoyed you. So anyway, I ended up doing these vlogs, and Corona happened. And I wasn't doing it to do a YouTube show. I'm like, oh my God. And then I hit a depression. I'm like, oh no, because now Corona is happening. It's stopping everything. So I started doing using my YouTube channel to talk to people, going on live. And somebody told me about the platform I was using. I'm like, oh, hi, who wants to talk to me? And then one person I started in, I'm not an interviewer. Who, I'm all over the place. And then I got another person, and went from music and things that I liked, from actors, actresses, to true stories, where a lady from Jonestown 20 years old, escaping with her daughter 1 year, with a 1-year-old daughter. I found it fascinating. And I'm getting to talk to these people and sharing these stories with other people. The Last Man with John Lennon, the night that John Lennon got assassinated. These are stories I want to document. So I took the channel from there, and now I'm organizing it, because I didn't have a vision what I was doing starting my channel. I was all over the map. So YouTube doesn't recognize what my channel is. That's my problem. It's really, the content was too long. The normal person has an attention, for 20 minutes. I was doing 2 hours because everybody was home. But now I'm restructuring, I'm rebranding, I'm doing it, trying to do it the right way. And I beg to get you on my show.
Oh
And
no.
I did your interview the right way, not too long, just enough time, and to get the story there. And I want to do more of that. But the algorithm. I'm 54. I could barely Twitter, and you really have to be in this young man's. Like I could barely see, and I'm like this. I'm like the guy out there. Like, real like this. I need him. Like I got my kids. I have a 5-year-old too. I'm 54. Look at this. Like this. Like look, he has the tattoos and he has a yellow magnifying glass. Yeah, that's right. So I'm rebranding the show, and I don't even know what the question you asked me. I just went off on somewhere else, but I'm trying to organize it where, have different playlists where I had like Frank Stallone the other day, Rock Sylvester Stallone's brother, and he's a great musician. And then, having Mick Jagger's brothers writing a book about the growing up in the Jagger family. So I'm bringing stories like that, authors, books, musicians, actors, human interest stories, comedy bands. They're trying to blend it together. And I just got to figure out who am I, what am I of the channel, and how can I get you to understand me and enjoy it, because it's entertainment. It's all entertainment.
Isn't that the part that's enjoyable in life is reaching out and becoming friends with people that have completely different sets of eyeglasses?
Oh, even like you're Crime Channel, and when I turned you on to a story, I'm like, what? Like I felt so proud. I'm like, oh wow, and I'm showing him, and he's sharing it here. This made me feel good, and that's what I want to do at my channel. I want to. There's so many stories out there. There's thousands, and I want it's people want to hear it. The other thing is my channel. I want to take people to different places, because there's people that are not well, and they can't leave their home, unfortunately, and they can't travel, and they're home, or they're afraid to go. This corona thing scares people in the brain, and so if I could bring something and some kind of joy, and I just got this out of his channel, it made me feel good. That's what I had a big channel where I started. This is a heavy one. Um, I like it's a songwriter named Harry Nilsson, and Harry Nilsson was part of John Lennon's world, and he did the song "Everybody's Talking" from the movie Midnight Cowboy. But he was a major, great songwriter. "Courtship of Eddie's Father," the theme song, about my best friend. Well, Harry Nilsson passed away at a young age. It's like 52, 53, and I was always into his music. So on Facebook, I went down the rabbit hole, and I found his son, Zach, and he was about a little younger than me. And this past year, so Zach, I go, oh, you're Harry's son. Would you come on? I wrote him a letter and got him on my show. I find out after the interview that Zach has stage 4 cancer, and I was like, wow, this is heavy. And so then he goes, Stefan, and then I would send him a link, because I do a vinyl show called Talking Wax on another channel, and he loves music. I goes, oh, and I saw him in the audience. Like, I go, Zach, come on, just because he wants to keep his mind away from what he's going through. And he's laughing, and I'm bringing him with the musicians, and we're talking music and vinyl records. Writes back to me, Zach, and he goes, Stefan, would you mind if I come on my show and talk about anything about my father, and why is it okay to put our animals asleep, but we here have to suffer and with this pain, and why can't we? And I'm like, oh, this is heavy. This is heavy now, Mike. This is heavy. I don't know how to act, because I go, well, yeah, but it's not really what my platform is. And I was real nervous. So now I'm reaching out to people, because Zach's father had a history. It was called the Hollywood Vampires in Los Angeles. When John Lennon broke up with Yoko for a short time in the mid 70s, he would hang out and drink and get, drunk with Harry, Alice Cooper, Keith Moon from The Who, Mickey Dolenz from the Monkees. It was like this party scene, college. It was like a college frat party for rockers that gone crazy for a short time. John Lennon is famous for getting thrown out of the Troubadour with Harry Nilsson at the Smothers Brothers show, making fun of them. So it's a famous story. So anyway, I go, let me reach out to a couple of people. Now, for you people, if you heard of the musician John Mayer, my sister is married to John's older brother. So I go down the rabbit hole. I go, I'm going to pull the favor card now. I don't want to ask anybody for favors, but this kid is dying. So one day I write to Zach, I go, what type of music? Who do you listen to? And he mentioned John. He mentioned this. He mentioned that. I wanted to surprise him. So I go down a list before we run the show. You think I could get so-and-so on the show? And some people didn't answer me. Um, and Alice Cooper was one of the people that hung out with Zach's father back then. So I do the show live. At the last second, Alice Cooper sends me a video of singing to Zach. He wrote him a song about Zach, and it was a beautiful thing. And Alice sent that to me, and then Rolling Stone magazine picked this up on the internet, and it went out viral. Because Zach wanted to get his message out there about he wanted to share what he was going through. That was the goal for him, to share what he's going through, that people should check themselves. He wanted to bring awareness. He wanted to bring a message to people. And that's when it hit me. I go, I'm getting chills right now thinking about it. I go, oh my God. I go, this is a sign. It's like, don't, because I almost gave up on my channel. I'm like, don't give up. You're touching people's hearts and you don't even realize it. And that's when I said, I got to do this full time, whether it's going to take me 1 year, 5 years, 20 years, you got a message here. And you're helping people. You don't even know it. And unfortunately in life, people don't recognize the message until you're gone. And I'm like, I refuse to be that guy. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get the message out. I'm going to make people laugh. I'm going to make them cry. But I'm going to make people aware of stuff. And then I have a doctor on my show and all that. So because of that show, it made me go full force. And I'm like, that's it. Sometimes you can't get all the guests. It's a hustle. And there's a lot of drama behind doing these channels. It's a lot of time away from your family. It's not just opening up your laptop. Hi, I'm here prepping and organizing, understanding the story and there's a lot, Mike. And I just rambled on, and stop me anytime. But
Oh no, this is great. And this is actually a perfect way to kind of wrap up this show today in this discussion. And I got to have you back, and I look forward to coming and visiting with you again on your channel. You've done some remarkable things. You've interviewed. I mean, gosh, I feel pretty amazed. You've had some big names on your show. I mean, big names.
I just had Gene Simmons. Frank Stallone is a wonderful. On top of my head, I was doing with Tawny Katane. She was the girl in the Whitesnake video, and we were actually doing the show together. And then she passed away suddenly, and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I was just going to do something with her. She was in the movie Bachelor Party with Tom Hanks. She was the Marilyn Monroe of the 80s and 90s, and she passed away. And I go, that's it. That's when I started restructuring my show. You're getting all these celebrities. Andrew Dice Clay, the famous comedian, who's a big supporter of my show, has been on my show. And I go, you know what? If you could get these people to want to come and spend time, these busy people with you, then you got something. Because, when you're starting a channel, and I try to make my channel a conversation with the artist. I don't want it to be like, no offense, Mike, like, where were you on the night of the 5th? I want it to be more like, I want to take the diva hat off of everybody and show that they have a heart and they're just like you and I. The people who are watching, oh my God, Gene Simmons from Kiss is just like me. I think like that. Gene's from Haifa, Israel. His mother survived the concentration camps. Her whole family got wiped out. Gene was about to cry. The man that sticks out his tongue, that breathes fire, right, flies in the air, dressed as a demon, is from Israel. He's born and raised in Haifa, and he's sharing his story on my channel, about to cry, with you, about his mother, the whole family, how this man just didn't know how to speak English when he came to America, Hebrew, and how he did a rebrand on his life, on him, and he came with nothing and he made something. That's a story. And that's what my show's about.
That's amazing. Folks, I hope you'll tune in to Coffee Talk with Adika Live. You can find it on YouTube. You can go to, I think, at Coffee Talk, or what's the site?
You could do at Adika Live is my Instagram. Okay. That's my IG. And then if you Google Adika Live on YouTube or Coffee Talk with Adika Live, I'm kind of restructuring the name because everybody's saying too much Coffee Talk. Like I said before, I'm rebranding stuff, but you can look up Adika Live, click up there. You'll see this handsome face, and then subscribe and like it. And if you don't, like I said, send it to somebody who's bugging you. If I bugged you, then annoy them back, get them back. Like Louis De Palma from Taxi says, but it's all about a good time and just have an open mind when you come to my show. It's a big playlist, and then it's about putting a smile on your face. End of story.
Stefan, thank you so much. It's been absolutely my honor to become your friend. I look forward to chatting with you more. Folks, if you didn't catch me and Adika talking about Jake Bird and the Jake Bird Hex and the little tour he gave us of Jake Bird's stomping grounds at the time he was arrested and convicted, go and watch that on the YouTube channel, and make sure you pick up my video on Jake Bird, a serial killer who killed 44 people at a minimum. Went down in history as one of the most prolific serial killers out there. A guy I'd never heard of, killed someone in my own town, and if it hadn't been for Stefan Adika, I would have never known who he was. It is just crazy how these things come together.
Crazy. It is. Mike, God bless you. Thank you for having me on here. And everybody, please, if you have not subscribed to Mike's channel, please do. If it's your first time here, give Mike a thumbs up and come over to me. I'll take your thumbs up too. Come on, there's enough thumbs up for everybody here. But thank you, Mike. Thank you for everybody watching, and thanks for all your support out there. And Mike, we got to do some more traveling crime locations. I got to be your guy. I want to be the man on the street for you.
That'd be a blast. I'm going to put you to work being the guy on the street. And folks, you can pick up Profiling Evil or Mapping Evil with Mike King at any of your favorite podcast platforms. And please always join us on YouTube. And you know, something that I like to say, Stefan, from time to time, especially when we talk about heavier things, and since we brought up the Zion Society case and the abuse of children, I like to remind people that if anybody out there is being abused or knows of someone who's being abused, it won't get better on its own. Please reach out to your local law enforcement agency or contact your medical or your mental health provider and get help immediately. It doesn't get better on its own. You need intervention and you need support, and it's okay to ask for it. And so from all of us at Profiling Evil and on behalf of Stefan of Adika Live, please be safe out there, and thanks for joining us today.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.